so what I'm going to talk, I will give a brief overview of our language tools on Taalweb, and then we will immediately focus on the spelling tools. What do we offer to the language users? How does it work? What's the technology behind it? Money. How is it financed? And I will also tell you a little bit about future developments that are changing every day at the moment. And we end with questions and discussions. And I will try to be as brief as possible to have more time for discussion. So let's go to taalweb.frl, and the website is online again since about 2 minutes. So let's go there. I hope it's still online and it didn't crash because there are too many people now. No internet? Well, there was internet. There was internet a couple. No, it's the. Well, then I stayed to this page, but you see it's in Frisian only. You see here the. Let's try to point the forecast word list. So that's the standard word list. Next to it, you have the staveringshifker, which is the spelling aid. Then you have the oorzetter, which is the translator we have. Then you have the woordboekportaal, where you can find all the Frisian dictionaries. Then you have downloads, and we are on the download side. And you have the paadwiezer, and the paadwiezer, that's the spelling guide. There you find the official spelling. So, but we are not gonna shift, and we gonna have a brief look at it again in a minute. So this is because I had a kind of emergency. Let's see. Over here. So this is the welcome site that you couldn't see now. So when we look at the spelling tools, we have a special, so the spelling guide that we had, it's an official spelling update in 2014, and one of the big debates, Thomas, was about dakje. And whether that was a big discussion whether with words with some words whether it was with accent circumflex, dakje, or with OA. My goodness, that was war about this. And this, our orthography is authorized by the provincial government already since more or less end of the 70s, 1980. We have downloads with a lot of plugins, and we could go back, but the exact details are not that important, I think. But we have them for different platforms, for different programs. So you have them for Word, for PowerPoint, for Excel, and then for Office, and for Firefox there's one. So there are several available, and if you are a Macintosh user like me, then you have much less possibilities. You don't have the full spelling aid available. And we have the standard word list, and that's a very important thing, the standard word. This is the basis, in fact, for all the work we do in language technology. It's a full list of the words of Frisian. So the lexical items and all the variants of these lexical items. And I don't know, is there internet already again? No? Yes? No. So let's stay here. Because there is internet. Why was it created, this standard word list? Well, that was because Frisians were uncertain about spelling. It's, as you probably know, it's mainly used as a spoken language. It has been written since, well, it has been written in old times. They are the oldest Frisian. There are runes in Frisian. So we should probably reinstall the runic types to show our identity. But there, in the Middle Ages, writing almost completely disappeared, and then in the 17th century, there were some writers who started writing in Frisian again, and we have got orthographic wars for about 150 years before they decided about a specific orthography, whether it should be more linked to Old Frisian, that nobody spoke, or it would be a bit more modernized, more looking like Dutch, of course. What are some of these uncertainties? How do you spell the word you today? Today? Is it one word? Are it three separate words, like you should do it in English, or is it with the what's the word in English for
hyphen?
The hyphen. I couldn't find the word. Okay, with the hyphen. Well, the official way of spelling in Frisian is with a hyphen. People doubt a lot, for instance, whether beauty, skilme, whether you have to spell it like this or with the KG one. Well, that's one. And how do you spell the word computer? And here, we don't do it the English way, we don't do it the Dutch way. No, it's Frisified, and it's the PG, that's typical Frisian. And also, there is my udakje to show, hey, we are Frisian. There's also uncertainty, not only about spelling itself, but also about what are correct standard word forms. And there's a lot of variation for soon or next. It can be aansten, aansten, aanstens, aansend, aanstonds, aanstoens. These are all variants of the same word. And people ask, oh, what do I have to write? Because they don't want to write wrong things. And so this is the word in the standard word list. There are also different dialect variants, because these accents, it's not really a regionally thing. So, for instance, for to burn, brane, barne, barne, brane, and this is an old dialect map from the 1930s. The phonetic transcription here is brane, brane, so that's, and they selected this variant as the standard one. So this is another map of Ierpel, or Ierapple, which is potato. So there's a lot of variation. Now, what were the criteria? So my colleagues, was long before I worked at the Institute, they had criteria. So they looked, frequency was an important criterion. In fact, we don't have good big corpora. We have corpora for Frisian, but not as big as we would like to have. So we don't have a very solid frequency list. But whether it was, they selected dwers as the standard variant because it's much more frequent in the corpus. Dwers had almost 1,500 hits, while dwars only has 340. Tradition is an important argument. How was it written in the past, in dictionaries, in textbooks? So for the word straight, brjocht or jeugd, there are two variants. Well, the tradition in the dictionaries, when you go back to the dictionaries of the early 20th century, it's always brjocht. So let's decide to take brjocht. Okay. Distance. They want to be different from Dutch. In Frisian, you have both geel and giel for yellow. But also Dutch is geel. So let's take giel, but that's different from Dutch. Analogy plays a role in the word list. So there are two variants, for instance, for the singular form of did, to do, past and singular. There are two forms, die, dir, and did. Now, they decided to select did with die to have more analogy with the plural form, which is always dierden. So you delete the suffix, so let's take that, and we do that for all the verbs. And then some Greek appears, etymology is used as an argument. There are two variants for apotheke, pharmacy, apotheke or uptake, from Greek apotheke, and so they decided to use the standard form apotheke, which is more similar to the etymological Greek word. I would say you could also use distance here. Well, and then you select the other one, uptake, because apotheek is the same as in Dutch. So when I ask my colleagues, how do you weight these forms? You don't get a real answer. No? And it's difficult to weight these decisions. So you're in trouble if you want to make standard word lists. But in our standard word list, we decide, or it was decided more or less, okay, this is the standard form, but we always list the variants. So the regional variants people used, and you will see that later on, this information is used. So that's how, but I would like to go there to have more in detail, but let's not go too much into that. But this is a long list of all the items that you have. So the list offers preferred forms and does not prohibit anything. We are not prescriptive, we try to be proscriptive. We give an advice. If you want to write standard, then you should use this, that is the correct standard Frisian form. But it's okay to use this form. But bear in mind, it's regional, or bear in mind, it's a Hollandism or Dutchism. Well, we call it in Frisian Hollandism, they will come back. But we, as a policy at the Institute, and the government has followed and officialized this policy, in fact, a variant is also correct. We want to step away from wrong. Yeah. Of course, not all language users want that. That's why we have the standard list too, to help them. But it's a matter of guiding people through the writing process, because there are about 400,000 speakers of Frisian, but let's say approximately 40,000 who claim that they can read and write more or less fluently in the language. Almost all writers, even the poets, novelists, are in fact, concerning writing, dominant in Dutch, not in Frisian. I have one colleague who is a dominant Frisian writer, I think. And he has done it systematically since the age of 20. So even when he makes very small notes, he does it in Frisian and not in Dutch. Most other people, when they take notes and it has to go fast, then they switch in fact to Dutch, the dominant one. Now, our spell checker checks on three levels: spelling mistakes and typing errors, on the basis of the standard verb list, on so-called Dutchisms or Hollandisms, and also on variants. So here is an example. Which newspaper published that report? In welke kranten stiert dat bericht? Has someone written. So, and this is, you can do it in the spelling aid. And You have plugin versions. I didn't tell you, in fact, you also have a version on the website. So you don't need to install it on your computer. You can just copy paste your text here and fix correction. Sometimes it's a mess to re-import that into your documents, of course, because all these colors. And here it tells me, okay, this is red, underlined in red. It tells me you have one stavering stuff, so there's one problem with orthography. There's one Hollandisme, of course in orange. And then we have in blue the varianten, the variants. In fact, kranten, that's an orthographic error. It should be with one T. Welke is a Hollandisme, but the real Frisian word is hokker. But it are mainly people working at the Fryske Academy who use the word hokker, and that the other language, at Afuk, or hokvoar is also a possibility. But almost everyone in everyday speech will use welke, but when you write, we signal, watch out, you have other possibilities. And then it's up to the writer to decide what he wants to take. And this is in fact something I want to refine in the future, so that you have much more information, that it tells you, okay, it's a regional variance. We have 3 main dialects, and that you even could select, oh, I'm a speaker of Wood Frisian, that you get the suggestions of Wood Frisian with a special color. If you're colorblind, you have a problem, of course, but that you get more indications, more guidance for your writing, because I think it's important to be consistent in your writing. It doesn't matter for us, well, also when you become a student of English at university. At most universities, you are free to choose, especially in the Netherlands, in Belgium, whether you want to do American English or British English. That's up to you, but you have to be consistent. So you can't mix the 2 orthographies. And that's something here, you can still mix Wood Frisian and Clay Frisian variants, which might be a bit strange. And here you have the stavering suggestions for kranten, and it gives you a number of suggestions what it could be. Spelling aids are stupid. I'll explain you in a minute why. Because the first suggestion here is the closest is granted. I don't even know what it means. Krante, kratten, krantje, kranten. Well, you have to know Frisian to be able to detect that it doesn't suggest you on the basis of the content. That's also something for the future, and you can always add things to your own list. And here for the variant, berjucht, so it's marked, yes, it's something that exists, but the standard word is this one, with an O. So that's how it works. Now, how was it built? How does it work? In fact, it's an adaptation of a Dutch spell checker. We didn't reinvent the wheel, never reinvent the wheel. People have done it before. So try to use things people have used. And it's a spell checker developed by a company, by Gridline. And I will come back to that issue of working with companies later on. It's dictionary based, and what are the basic principles? And that's in fact the dictionary is our word list. You need an exhaustive list of all correctly spelled words. If you only have a small list, it won't work. Second principle is any word that is not in the list is a spelling error. So neologisms are a problem. So you need a system to update. And the dictionary that you have is used, in fact, for your spelling suggestions. Now, the quality of your correction depends heavily on the quality of your dictionary. If it's too small, you get incorrect marking of many correct words. If your dictionary contains spelling errors, then you will suggest misspelled word as corrections. So you need people who are really knowledgeable about making these lists. If you do it with crowdsourcing, you need to verify everything. So it's not automatically that it will go right. And that's something that we have. We are already an institute that is working for 80 years on dictionaries. So we have large word lists. We have, and our lists are free of spelling errors. But if you have to start from scratch, this is a lot of work. Now, our standard word list is the core, and it includes these regional variants and these hologisms. The system behind it also makes a kind of distinction between typos, which are the accidental mistakes, where you insert or substitute letters that are close on your keyboard, so you need information of the order on the keyboards, which differ by language area often. And we have phonetic spelling errors, incorrect spellings that are phonetically similar to the correct spelling. And people also doubt sometimes about the pronunciation of words. And the system, in fact, uses information about common mistakes. Vowels, people mix up, or these consonant clusters that they make errors in. Now, how are these spelling suggestions generated? The initial selection is done on simple heuristics, on the basis of the dictionary words, and then these words are scored on distance measures, and it's in fact an adapted Liebenstein distance. It was one of the questions I had for my colleagues on Saturday. Please, could you give me an answer to this? Who has been involved in this in the development? But we are working with a company, and I think we don't know exactly how they do this as an institute. I consider this as a problem, but that's of course part of the ownership of that you work with a private company. So this part is not open source yet, but I will try to negotiate that we can change that in the future. And the words with the smallest distance are given as spelling suggestions. So money, money, money. Let's go to that one. How is this financed? Well, we do it ourselves as Fryske Akademy. We have a lump sum, a yearly budget, and we use part of that budget we have used to develop not only the orthographic tools, but the other language tools we have. And we get, and our institute is partly sponsored by the national government and by the provincial government. And for developing this whole Taalweb website, that need to be refreshed a little bit, I have to admit, and the orthographic aids, we get special extra funding of the provincial government, because digital Frisian is an important issue for them. There was a big project to construct taalweb.frl between 2012 and 2014, so it was before the system, and I couldn't get access to the budgets due to the fact that the server was down, so I couldn't, and I don't have these because it's in, before I was there, I don't have it on my personal laptop. I can't verify exactly what the budget here was, but I think it was quite high. My bet is that the total budget must have been around $1 million. In 2017, I obtained a grant to make the Office 365 version, because we have all these other versions now for Office 365. Development, a 4-year maintenance contract with the company, and the work we have to do, but in fact we have all the data. We don't have to develop or content-wise development work at the Institute. It's mainly a program. So the budget was for that, just for Office 365, to keep it running for 4 years, 87,000 euros. We got a grant of 58 from the government. So it means as an institute that we pay the other 30,000. That's a lot of money. And in fact, the real price was much higher. And the company we work with has paid that price. Because Office 365 is a disaster. So don't start with that. It's hell, apparently. So what are the problems we run into? Well, the provincial government only wants to subsidize development, not license costs, hosting, and update costs. I did a little bit of trick too for the new one. I could get it in, but they told me after. So, second problem. You know Dutch are stagey. It's one of the stereotypes, but it's true. Frisians are too, and they do not want to pay for language tools. Even if you would ask €5, most people would not want to pay for it. It has to be free. And in, well, we as an institute, we have decreasing budgets and increasing costs. There's a lot of debate already for quite a while at the institute about our mission. Why are we on Earth? We as language people, we say clearly, we are on Earth for the Frisian language and for the other language varieties spoken in the province. That's our aim, that's me. But of course our colleagues historians, they have a different view on that. And they have been in power for quite a while on the Institute. So a lot of the money went to history in the past year. And there's also the tension between being a research institute that has to be evaluated on research output that has to be at the highest international standards in the Dutch system, and at the other hand, providing free access to language tools and develop dictionaries for language users and translation machines. So that's these are some of the difficulties we have. Now, future developments. Compatibility with new software versions is always an issue. So you have to keep update, but you also have to dare to give up. And that's also difficult, because there's always one Frisian being 87 years old, but who still writes and who knows how to use that plugin in Office 8033. Yeah, he wants to keep it running because he doesn't want to buy a new computer. And then if you don't adapt the older versions, people start, oh, it's a shame. But we will focus now on the mostly used packages. Of course, there should be more stuff for the Macintosh. We focus on easier installation. It really has to be plug and play because we also function as a help desk, and if people want to install it, they phone, no, it doesn't work, and that takes a lot of time. We will build in hyphenation. It's something that's not built in yet. And we want to make better suggestions based on error analysis. So that's why you need research to see, okay, what kind of errors do people make. And we are in fact trying to change from, it's already more than just a spelling aid, because we give these advices on variants. And I explained a little bit more on how we want to develop that, but it's more from a spelling aid to a writing aid. Also, words that are often confused by language users we will put in. And we want to do grammatical correction. And that's one of the reasons, not the only one, but that's one of the reasons why we are currently developing a part of speech there to be able to do grammatical correction. And we have to think about a new financing model. Unless the provincial and the government and the state, and that would be the ideal solution, that they say, okay, you have, let's say, 250,000 euros a year, especially for doing that, keep these things running. We are the second official language of the country. I think it should be possible. Well, that's the type of negotiation. Another possibility could be is, and that's one of the developments, and yeah, it follows in the following, so I'm running already a little bit here. We are working on advanced products. Who uses these advanced products? That are, at this moment, mainly professionals. Whose are these professionals? The provincial government, the municipalities. And so the provincial government, they don't want to sponsor the licenses or the keeping them up to date. That's not something they want to sponsor, but they want to pay for the product they use. That's something that could be negotiable. So what we probably will do is trying to get money from the provincial government, especially for the advanced projects, and also from the communities, and for instance from the one or two professional translators. But they are such a small group that's probably not worth doing it. But there's another important evolution at the moment. And it's not yet completely settled. We are still in the preparation of this, but it looks quite good. That is that Frisian will become a language in the Microsoft products, in the new products they develop. The provincial government really wants that because it increases the visibility and the prestige. Oh, look how well we do with our language policy. We are in the Office products. We are in Google Translate. Well, we have a much better working translating program. But that's their policy at the moment. But at the same time, that spelling aid will be less powerful and more prescriptive than the current spelling aid we have, which is in conflict with the language policy of that same provincial government. So that's why we will work probably now, if the Microsoft story goes on 2 tracks, which is the basic version, that you can have in Microsoft, and then you have advanced versions with plugins. So that's a little bit about the future. So one of the things, and that's part of our mission of our institute, sometimes our mission is unclear, but that's for me an important thing, is, and it's also for the provincial government, We have the Mercator Research Center too, that we want to help other minorities with the things we have done. We are also helped by, not only by things developed for Dutch, but for instance, we work quite a lot now with the Basque country. And I'm really looking into the possibilities with what they have developed, how we can use it, whether we can use the same technology to make our dictionaries better for it. So, but we are really happy to help you with criteria, procedures, and also technical infrastructure. But bear in mind, if you're a language with only 80 speakers, this is probably too much to try yet. So it's something we really have to discuss. What's possible. So time for questions. Yes, we have these we have the statistics of the downloads, and we have the statistics of the online usage. But we don't know, once downloaded, how much they use it. That's something we don't know. But for instance, what we, our website is, the homepage of our website is Frisian. Yeah? More than 90% of the users immediately click to the Dutch version. So that's, on how much it is used, we don't know, but there has been a study, an internship also about it. People have been looking, do secondary school kids know about this? The answer is no. And even when within the last, that's something, and the question is whether we as an institute should do it, or whether it's part of another institute and provincial government to do more these publicity campaigns. If I have to put research money in publicity campaigns, I have a problem with the research evaluation. But it's really something that goes wrong in the Frisian area. People don't know we have this translation program. People don't know that there exist plugins for Velde. And that's an important point.
Can people use this project on mobile phones?
Yes, they can. Yes, they have.
Like automatically, like on computer, or they just can go on this website by phone and then check it, or
No.
They text message and
no. There is. You can have a spelling aid, an app that can be installed on your phone. Yes.
I had a question about all the varieties and the standard one that they choose. I was just wondering whether the varieties relate to specific areas, like geographical areas. So for instance, in the Greco case, we also have varieties, but you really can't have standard one, because one is related to a village and the other one is related to the other, so it means like kind of promoting only one village on the others. So I was just wondering whether the varieties are just different ways of pronouncing the same word, or they're related to specific villages or areas.
No, well, one of the advantages Frisian has is that dialect variation is relatively small in comparison with other languages. When I compare it with Dutch dialects, the variation is relatively small. So there is some lexical variation, there is some pronunciation variation. It's rather easy to deal with, and they propagated already the clay Frisian dialects. It's considered as the most prestigious one. It's the richer area of the province. But one of the problems we have is that in the urban centers, the local dialects of the urban centers are not Frisian, but they are mixed varieties. But it's really something that I think for your case, you shouldn't propagate a standard. But you should try to have
Open heart
Open heart for all variation, and then, yeah, how do you cope with that? It's really something to think about.
That's a big question.
Thanks for your talk. I was interested especially in this standard word list. We're also trying to do the same thing, not as a language policy, but just for the learning material that we're creating to get over many other conflicts. And I was wondering whether people who use this word list really embrace the open heart variation, or whether they simply see it as an end user as, okay, this is the correct way. If you have
my impression because most of the language courses are developed at AFUC, so that's not our work, and that's something that goes wrong, I think, in Friesland too, this collaboration between the linguists, knowing the language, knowing the variation, and then the language teaching teachers and courses, the development of these courses. There's in part still a generation who is a bit more normative, a bit more prescriptive. But at the other hand, you see also that their teachers come from different areas and they don't speak them, not always the gay Fryske, the standard Frisian. But it's a struggle, and it's something because the province has now formulated a very ambitious language policy. They want that all kids become fluent speakers and writers of Frisian, all kids in Friesland. And they think they will succeed at doing that in 2030. They don't have a plan for that.
Just the date.
They have the date, they fixed the date. But all the consequences, they have not a clue about how to do it. But that's something that we really, and that's why I'm so much interested also in the phonetic variation. Because we know a lot about lexical variation in Frisian. Syntactic variation is very small. There's almost no syntactic differences between the variety. But we know not almost the last phonetic studies, descriptions of Frisian date from the 1980s. So, and I'm doing work now on Frisian phonetics, and I run into all kinds of fascinating phenomena for a linguist. But you need this information. And my ideal is that you can create materials for language courses that you can say, okay, I'm a speaker of this region, and that the material you will get and the lexical variants and the pronunciation examples will be coming from that language. That's the intention. Money.
Well,
There was one more question.
I would like a very short and very hypothetical question. If you were given the opportunity, would you like to include such a translation into Google Translate? I'm not talking about like all of the technical stuff, but question: if you were given the opportunity to,
We are in Google Translate.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, and there was a crowdsourcing event for that. I think it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. But the way they do it, it's they ask people to translate words and very short sentences.
I mean, this version of yours that you have on your website, because this is way different than standard Google Translate. This was my question, not about like normal Google Translate, but using the using the material. Would you be inclined to kind of outsourcing the upkeep of all of those tools to Google?
No, because Google is not interested in the way. No, they are not. They are not interested in doing so. So if we, but the other question doesn't count, because if we do that, we will never have the quality. Because if you want to do a still a good translation device for a small language, you need parallel corpora. All these modern systems that we don't really know how they work, they work if you have enormous amounts of data, and that's what Google and all kinds of companies are working on. And so we are losing the battle if we don't develop our own things. And so I think we have a parallel corpus of about 2 million words. It's one of the plans is to increase that with a lot of new material to make a better translation program. And it's always the problem, but apart from that, yes, do you want to give things to the development to a company like Microsoft? Yes, but also there you are bound with their regulations, and it has to fit their system. But they are dependent on us. Why is Microsoft now doing this pilot with us? In fact, they had a kind of pilot to include, I think it was Navajo as a minority, and it was community driven. The whole the delivery of the materials, and it went completely wrong. It was a disaster. So they had to stop that project. So, and we had contacts with one of the Dutch people working for Microsoft at a quite high level. So he started discussing, and so they wanted to give it a second chance. And one of the things that convinced me, in fact the main thing that convinced them, is that there was an organization like Fryske Akademy behind, who has the data sets, who has the expertise to communicate with them, to deliver things in the right format. Because otherwise, they don't do it. These are companies that earn money. And every now and then they want to do something for their visibility. And that's why Facebook, for instance, is interested in all kinds of smaller languages. But there are lots of things, because you lose your own data. And sometimes there are contracts, I think it was one of the data sets we have that we used for building our bilingual speech recognizer. I think it was Google who was interested in it, and they only and we have a standard contract for companies. It's a kind of European contract to do that, and they didn't want that contract. It was only on their conditions, and then we say, okay, for 3,000 euros, we don't sell our soul to Google. Yeah. But it's an important discussion. And it's these companies, they want to get data from you, but you never get insight on how they do it, what they do it, how advanced they are in translation technology. Because they have power, but for the small languages, if they do it, it's kind of, they will do it for 1, 2, or 3, but they will never do it for 3,000 languages.
Are there technologies for visually impaired people?
No, nothing. Nothing, and in fact I have never heard in fact, yes, there is one, in the sense that there is the text-to-speech system. So when you are on the website of the Frisian Broadcasting Corporation, there you can have everything read out. And if I remember, that's a system that's already in place for 7 or 8 years, I think. And also this text-to-speech was developed by a private company, and in fact the demo I used, that's exactly that system. But for instance, if you want to have a new voice in it, it costs 25,000 euros for a new voice. So, because this company also has to earn a little bit. It's a very small company, and the expectation is that at the level of speech synthesis and text-to-speech systems, a lot will change in 1 or 2 years' time. So you will always need a very good data set to build it, but it will be much easier, much less handwork than it used to be. So building a traditional rule-based text-to-speech is a lot of manual work. You have to prepare the data, and so what we hope is that in not very long time, at that level, there's a lot of possibility. But we never got the demand either. We got a demand for the text-to-speech, so it's someone who has a disease that has influence on the muscular and neurological system, so she will lose her voice. So, and her voice was used, while she was still able to speak relatively well, to build her new voice. It's someone who works for the provincial government, and the provincial government put a lot of money in that facility for one specific person.
From what you presented, I gathered that there's a level of complexity when it comes to spelling, right?
Yeah.
Correct spelling, which is the core of this technology. But I was also wondering about grammar and syntax. And my question is also, to what extent? I mean, I don't know anything about Frisian, the socio-linguistic aspects of it, but looking more in depth, to what extent is Frisian a reflection, or not a reflection, but how close it is when it comes to grammar and syntax to Dutch. And in that sense, the fact that you have Dutch as a template, so to speak, you did mention that at the beginning, make it easier to
this closely relatedness of it's a West Germanic language. Our closest relative is in fact English. Old English. That's English. And you see it in some very subtle syntactic things. But on average, and they like to use this because it gives prestige to the language. Similar to English gives you prestige. But the grammatical differences, there are lots of Dutch loanwords, of course, so the lexical stuff, but also the grammatical differences between Frisian and Dutch are very small. They are extremely small. With German they are even small. Between Dutch and German they are smaller. But I think the only thing there is the case system. But word order is completely. But there are some subtle grammatical things. And
so that saved sometime when it came to transfer. And when it presents again, probably for non-European languages, a big challenge. I mean, especially because we have, for many years not been present in electronic devices, and so to do the whole conversion would take
we have the advantage that there is quite a lot already developed for Dutch too. So, for instance, for the part of speech tag, for the development, one of the things we tested, and that works reasonably well, is having your Frisian text translated with our oorzetter to Frisian. Have your Frisian text translated to Dutch with the oorzetter, and then do Dutch part of speech tagging, and then whoops, put it again on the Frisian, works in fact reasonably well, but it's extremely slow. So it's not workable from that perspective. But if you could speed up that process, you could have a reasonable part of speech tagger for very specific purposes. For instance, for detecting whether it's Frisian or Dutch. It could work with some small adaptations in it. But that's really an advantage we have. And that's something that some minorities don't have and others do have. And then it's also the political question. Do you want to use it? The pride,
I mean, if it's going to save you time, I guess that, how close is Greco to what would be the closer grammar, Greek?
Yeah, definitely learn Italian.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this.
And also like Italian to Latvian.
Yeah, well, it's probably similar to Frisian Dutch, Latvian Latin.
I think so, yeah.
But when it comes to Mexican Spanish and
Yes.
Mixtec and
No, that's totally different. It's totally different story. Now, for these closely related languages, I think we have an infrastructure. For instance, the oorzetter, the way it works is in fact language independent. It's a matter of putting in lexicons and a grammatical system and rule transfer system, but the technology itself can work on every combination. Yes, coffee.
Thank you.